originally the Goethe-Institut felt that we somehow need to react to the changing situation of Europe, basically, with this project. So the idea was to build a project that had some official structure to it, of course, which you always need, that had a budget, etc., but that allowed for the communities of different places in Europe to express their voices of what they felt was for their specific places relevant. And that it would be a project that would give, exactly as the title says, these kind of free spaces for people to express this and for people to discuss these problems or these issues together, and then possibly to find a solution, or maybe even just by talking to each other and by exchanging, to get a different outlook onto them. And so what the kind of structure of the project was that we were, as the local Goethe Institutes in all the countries in Europe, we were encouraged to find a partner, ideally a partner that we hadn't worked with before. So we chose AWAZ in Carlisle. For us, we chose Carlisle for different reasons. It was also because geographically somehow it linked our, both like Glasgow and London, but also, of course, because of the quite high Brexit outcome here in Carlisle, and then also the whole location of Carlisle.
And we came across the Unity Festival, and this is how we found AWAZ. And then I wrote to him and sent him the project description, and he liked it, and so we continued.
In each of these cities, a core question was developed, and for those of you who were here during the last workshop, this question was kind of found quite democratically, I would say, in this case here in Carlisle. In other cases, I think some of the partners also had kind of questions already that were crucial to them. And these questions would be quite specific about these different cities in Europe. Each of the cities was then had to make a little film, so that I think AWAZ also sent them around to you beforehand. So we had, for each of the cities, we had a short film describing the core question of the place that the question came from. And then we met in Warsaw in December, where all the partners came together, and also some of the Goethe-Institut representatives, and all these questions were kind of put onto one table. We had a lot of discussions around the whole topic of freedom, what it means. And to me, I mean, Uwe was also there, Nikolai, but for me, I think the most interesting about the whole meeting in Warsaw was that Europe was so present in all its complexity and all its versatility. So there were very different groups, very different questions, mentalities, and I mean, this whole experiment of what Europe really means was kind of very present during that meeting in Warsaw. And then there was something interesting, which is also something we usually don't do. The partners were teamed up by a random choice. It was like this bingo machine. So we weren't involved in this process. It was total chance by which city would be connected to which other city. And Carlisle got Thessaloniki. I felt from the beginning that AWAZ and Christos from ARtBOX from Thessaloniki, they had a good chemistry. I think they clicked, and they had a good vision together on where to take this.
I'm Aftab Khan. I'm development officer with AWAZ Cumbria, and I'm leading on this project delivery in Carlisle. So the key, the real help for me to develop our delivery plan would be that if each of the table can help me to answer one question. So at the end, basically, we will collate that together, and then we move forward. You know, that would help us to overall direction of the project delivery, basically.
We started with encouraging people to think for themselves and where they fit in terms of community and more widely than that. So to encourage people to think critically. We talked about how we don't think that people will always give the answers that you want to hear, but they're equally as important to share. And we thought a wider benefit would be encouraging people to talk openly and honestly, but in a respectful way, so learning those skills of communicating with other people. And we felt it was good to be challenged, so one of the benefits would be that people will be able to question their own views and have a conversation about about those and explore them. And part of that was, I can't repeat the same thing, but that's fine. We also had quite a lot of conversations about how sometimes the way that you connect with people is through an interest that is sort of shared. So you talked very much about your role as a sportsman being a way of identifying with other people because it was a commonality and something that people shared. So we thought that that was an important way to think about it. Is there anything else?
No, I think it's just for myself personally. I went around a lot of schools, and on race equality at schools, it's you've got some people there that no matter what you say, how they've been brought up, they're never going to change their mind. Whatever, because I'm a colour, I was wrong, I was never going to be right. And it's not how the kids are thinking themselves, that's just how they're brought up, and that's the views. And I think that still goes on, not just on about race, but a lot of things. And you'll get some kids in the States in Carlisle that don't know anything outside the state where they're brought up. You'll get the luckier ones who the parents have got a bit of an idea and they can talk to them and bring them up to date of what's going on, what's happening abroad and what. But it'll be amazing the amount of kids in Carlisle that don't even want to know what's happening abroad or whatever type of things that we're doing because they're just not interested. And that's the thing that we've got to, if people come to us and ask for help or guidance, then we've got to try and make them aware that we're just normal people ourselves, and the best way to do it is just to be open and honest. And I think that's one of the faults that we have a lot in Britain, is making a mind up where somebody lives, they've got to live there or they're no good. We make a decision on somebody before actually even knowing them. You've got to go open-minded. We could go to Thessaloniki and their ideas of things and ours, we might see something entirely strange to us. But because it's strange, we've got to be open, and if we've got a question, to say, well, I'm not really sure about this. But it's no use us going there and just agreeing and saying, oh, that's good, that's good, that's good. We've got to give a view, an open view of what we think is the best way forward and how people are going to benefit from it.
Well, we had quite a stormy discussion, which was brilliant already.
Mostly my fault.
No, and mine, and well, so. But actually, from what you said, it's totally following on from what you said. In fact, in the language as well, you brought forward that the success is holding openness, and for us, that actually went to how we run how the project is run. You know what the end result is. But also to do with the question as well, that we felt that there was a possibility that within the question that openness the door had already been closed, and I think some of us were quite interested in keeping that door open. I think what you said earlier about it's not finding answers, it's what questions you ask. So just in terms of what it would look like, success would be holding the openness whilst doing something specific, and that we also thought that isolation is not the opposite of freedom. We thought that was quite an important thing to keep going. And the success would be something tangible, but keeping openness, that Thessaloniki and Carlisle would engage and learn from each other, and to keep critical thinking going throughout, with possibly an outcome being an exhibition in the middle of town, which could possibly be an open exhibition, that anybody could bring things to.
First outcome would be to have acknowledged and explored isolation and gained greater understanding what that means. we talked about the overlap between Thessaloniki's looking at identity, European identity, and Carlisle with isolation, and the fact that there's overlaps there. And it'd be good to have explored what the overlaps are, not just these separate things, but actually how we come together in what the joined thinking is. So an outcome together to break down barriers, to have learned from a process of listening, which chimes with what the other two groups have said, that actually we're talking about actually listening being a really, really important part of any outcome, and that the ownership of an outcome sits in the communities, and that there's a clarity of communication throughout. So it's about actually how the project is run, so that people know what's happening, and it's not this strange thing that's happening over there and occasionally involves them and then goes away again. But actually there is that real clarity. To have developed a plan for how we continue after this project to maintain a dialogue. So how we continue that dialogue, and to have some idea about actually how that's going to happen, so that also that's part of the communication clarity. That an exhibition as a space and mechanism for dialogue rather than a fixed thing, that it's something that is an active exhibition. It's not a showing of things, it's actually creating a space, continuing that dialogue. To have gained a greater understanding of the detail of feelings about European identity in Carlisle. So not a tick box, not to have got tick box answers to questions, but actually to understand what that really means. And this is where those connections and crossovers come between Thessaloniki's question and Carlisle's. A greater engagement, a real engagement from communities in exploring and expressing the experience of isolation, and a better understanding of those communities, so whose voice we're actually helping to show, helping to listen to, whose voice we're really listening to.
So we talked about collecting stories, which is something that Derek and I are already talking about for our refugee project. And it's something that Derek's already worked with successfully. He did a project 10 years ago in Carlisle where he collected stories on post-it notes, basically. So just taking that kind of idea so that we could collect stories either handwritten or digitally, or even record them, and we could take that format. It could be very kind of grassroots. It could go into schools or old people's homes or community centres or shop fronts, so that you're kind of trying to like get mass public engagement to give people a voice, which is what we've been hearing this morning. And something else we discussed was like, it's not just about giving people a voice, but it's about connection. So there's all very well people having their say, but if what they say isn't heard, then there's a feeling of powerlessness. So like, how do we continue that so that people feel that there's a kind of connection and a conversation? So looking at how that would go forward long term, which I don't know if we got that far, but just feeling like it's not just about this one exhibition, but there's a dialogue, so that there's a, that isolation becomes connection. I think that was.
It's turning the isolation into freedom. That's,
Yeah.
you said that they're not necessarily opposite to each other. They like a different, same coin of different sides of it. And how can we turn that around and make our isolation our freedom? That's a big question as well, but that's all how we will do that from, as I understand from what you say.
It's about kind of process of engagement, the input versus the output or the agenda. So if you engage with people around some good questions, then and collect stories or responses, then that creates an agenda for change. So understanding what that agenda is and what the priorities that come out of that might be can lead to real action. So the danger with these things is they become a circular talking exercise, and so to have some real tangible outputs would be important. And as Lulu said, part of that engagement could be bringing these stories together into an exhibition, but that's as it's already been mentioned, that should be a living exhibition, so people who visit should be able to add their own stories to that. So it's an ongoing process of engagement, which probably we lack in Carlisle and Cumbria.
Their question is, could a new media exhibition about European identity become your freedom zone? We're not sure who your is, but like we've sort of gone.
Yeah, I explained it that it means that people in Thessaloniki, so like for themselves, because obviously it is about their question. So,
okay, right.
And obviously, whether, as we said earlier, Jane mentioned that there are overlap. It could be ours as well. so yeah, that's fine.
Right. Well, first of all, we were talking about European identity. And what is it? Yeah. How do you define it? These are questions that we would send back if they want to. Yeah. And the suggestion we meet in the middle in Vienna, but that'll happen, and does an identity include or exclude people? That's on that things. The big questions to send them. That after their original one, I think their idea of a new media exhibition is a pretty good idea, because we don't have to get everybody together in the town square all the time, and it will be another thing that goes on, which getting people together in the town square is quite good, don't get me wrong about that, and that to do that though, we've got to start making different kinds of art, different kinds of stories. So I would suggest that's, and we have enough people here who are skilled at doing that, but I would suggest instead of trying to give people a voice, which it's not in our remit. We can't give people a voice. It's a ridiculous idea, but we can send our own questions about identity and about isolation out, but don't send them out. Think that from the top, send them out sideways. I'm going to start tonight because I've got a poetry night on, and I'll just send them away. And sorry, it makes me sound like I'm a leader or something, but I'm not. It doesn't work like that. And it goes sideways. Then they will write some poems. Yeah, they will talk to other people. I know people, school teachers, they'll work with things like this. And we could have a big bundle of stuff. Round the theme. How we organise it later, that comes later. Yeah, but not only would it be good stuff, interesting stuff, perhaps it would help Thessalonica with their question, because hey, we're Europeans, whether we're like it or not, and they're at the distance, other part of the what's it called, the landmass. Yeah, and I've run out of cloth.
So we wanted to connect with them, somehow work with them, and we discussed the irony of Greece, the birthplace of democracy, and Carlisle, a place where democracy was used to vote to leave Europe. But we're sure we'll have a lot in common.
Yeah, home of theatre, home of art, home of poetry, lots of good stuff.
Great. Thank you very much for this informed input for our, next steps. What I would like is, particularly from our artist community and the people who are engaged in art and that one, is that having that dialogue and sharing those ideas, because obviously they have their own experiences and ideas that how can we collate this. The whole process and these voices and then represented. So having those one and clarity, and once we thrash out in that one in April, the next, those 5 days, and then we will have a clear action plan in place, and then we follow up with that one, and the further engagement will get together. And if we agree, but as I said, from our side, it's open. If we agree between 25th and 29th that we want a media exhibition, whichever form and shape, that's we will decide late, in that meeting. But if that's what we want, that the material, the stuff which we will get together, so that will be presented in form of the exhibition and the dialogue, and so obviously it will be in a prototype or in shape. We may not be able to fully have that one because of the resources and all that, but that is the ongoing commitment. And from Goethe Institute, their commitment to support our follow-up actions, and obviously exploring additional resources and all that working together. So that's all up till now. We have the schedule for, and then obviously myself and Peter will be going on the 16th, and we'll come back on the 19th. I will take all this, the suggestions with colleagues over there, so that this is our view and our, the way we would like to take it forward. And then obviously when they will be over here, we get together again, and that's how we'll take it forward.
This was all new to me, and it's good to see how people are involved, and we're not doing it just for the love of things, we're doing it to help. And I honestly hope that it does come off well, and thank you very much for your attention you put in. This has been far better than I was anticipating.
So thank you very much, Chair, for me. I hope I will have the support from my board to continue to explore this further.
We're so grateful for all your time and your thoughts and your input, because this is really what makes the project valuable to us, and it's also where we really learn. So thank you so much for coming today, and we hope that we see each other again very soon.